Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's been a while. Haven't really brought you guys into the freaking store for, well, it's been freaking months. But, yeah, so haven't had to really stock up on anything, at least as much as I have been. Kind of just because I wanted this bulk to be a little smoother, right? A little more gradual. I don't need to start off with 5,000 calories off the rip because, I mean, what am I supposed to do, right? If I just came from a dieting phase and I've been eating 2,000, 2,500 calories on average, what does that mean? That means that 2,000 calories is my regular intake, right? That's as much gas as I need to fill my tank for, you know, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. Just as like an analogy. So if I want to start gaining weight, I just have to eat a little more. I don't have to jump from 2,000 to 4,000. It just doesn't make any sense. You'd kind of start spilling over, as it were, and not in a good way. I'm not talking like, oh, I'm getting so full. No, if I went from instant 5,000 from 2,000, I would see a substantial weight gain, like pretty quick, but it wouldn't be good weight, because that's far too much of a deficit than what's actually even necessary, because if I go from, I mean, just imagine it, right? Imagine 2,000 extra calories, totally unnecessary, apart from, maybe the 3,000 I might really utilize for workout recovery, hypertrophy, everything else. It's like there's a sweet spot of a calorie surplus, right? This is maintenance. This is a little higher, right? And this is kind of the green zone where you eat enough, you're growing, you're recovering, you're getting bigger and stronger, but you're not getting too soft. So the bigger that this surplus becomes, you'll reach a point where it's unnecessarily big, and instead of actually just putting on more size, you start just putting on more fat. And I've seen it a few too many times, but it's just taken a bulk to an unnecessary level. I can kind of see the appeal if you're like more of a power lifter character. You're aiming for like just pure strength performance output. Body fat would be no concern. Let's say you're you're a guy who could not give two shits about his weight class. But if you're a little more just regular lifter oriented, you're concerned with staying at like a reasonable body fat, then you kind of want to stay in the green where you're eating enough, but you're not eating so much that you're just packing on fat for no reason. But usually that's not even a problem. I think most guys struggle with even getting enough food in to grow in the first place. So, I'd say 90% of the time, keep eating. And then for the 10% of the guys who are doing a little too much, maybe your ratio of meals to treats is a little off, then you got to chill out, right? But at least make sure that the scale is changing in the direction that you want to go. But for me, now that I want the scale to keep increasing, I've kind of approached a little more of a chill kind of well, not diet in general. Like I'm still kind of eating very similar to what I have been before, but in just a simpler manner. Because if I sit here just grinding a bunch of just like kind of junkish, more sugary processed kind of foods, things with, I mean, it's almost like you're following a rule. The less ingredients in a meal, the better. Because I mean, it's not like it hasn't worked, right? I'm still walking around like 265, 270, but with that much food, I mean, just you're kind of forced to cut down to the bare essentials, so it's just easier to keep eating. So actually, I was about to say cut and then jump to whatever I was going to grab first, but looks like we made it right to the rice. Now I think these microwavable rice packets are sweet just because they're quick, instant, 30 or I guess a few minutes in the microwave, and I just like them. But yeah, usually these are pretty solid. I always end up getting the kind of a more flavored version. I like these. These are good, but only four. And then the rest of my rice intake, I've been leaning towards a little more stuff like this, right? I'm talking a box of any kind of instant rice. I'm not a rice cooker utilizer just yet. I do need to kind of bust that out, but the instant rices work pretty freaking well. I'm talking way out, 200-ish grams dry, maybe more like 150 actually. Pour in just enough water that there's maybe like, I don't really measure it out perfectly. I just kind of have a gist of how much I need, but I add just enough where I can tell the rice is definitely floating around in the water, but it's not so watery that it won't all kind of absorb. Maybe look up how much water for how many grams of rice. 5 minutes in the microwave, ends up perfect. So that is instantly mixable with a certain browned pan-fried meat. So I think we gotta head over to that next. All right, I lied. So for anyone a little more dieting centric, I don't want to just make this trip for my fellow bulking lifters. I'm a big fan of this, right? I'm talking high fiber tortillas. There's a whole friggin' wall of them. Try out a few, see what really works. I will say with all of the, there's kind of a debate because if you're, a carb centric tortilla brand like this, obviously you're going to want to make it seem like it's got the most fiber and the lowest calories possible. So, take that into account. There is like a 25% ratio of leeway that all these kind of food products have where, it's not like everything is perfectly 70 grams per tortilla, right? So they get some leeway when they write it onto these labels. But, if something's a little too good to be true, it may be, better off to kind of assume so. So I was a freaking, I don't know how many gallons I consumed over the course of my few dieting phases of a Carb Master chocolate milk. But I swear, every time I started to drink it, it took me a little while to kind of realize, but if I really had like a couple of cups in a day, and like this is supposed to be like a macro friendly ass treat, because it had 8 grams of protein, 5 of carbs, 2 of fats, like in a cup, and that's pretty decent. A regular thing of chocolate milk is like double, maybe even triple that calorie. Definitely almost quadruple that fat value. But as soon as I start drinking a ton of it, I could tell that my sort of progression of weight loss was beginning to slow. So I think that was probably the most blatant example of either just lying or exaggeration of the calorie values. But yeah, if you're trying to peel down, anytime you see like a calorie smart version of something, that might be your ticket, right? Swap a Coke with a Coke Zero. Swap I can't think of another swap, but you get the gist. But let's go grab some ground beef. All right, I lied. Another quick stop. For a while, there was like a freaking egg crisis going on. And I think it's just going on all the time. Like, $5 a dozen, totally nuts. But I think the real hack, if you're trying to actually, leverage at least egg whites for your protein intake, is going to be getting it in carton form. I mean, once it's cooked, you'd really have no freaking idea. Plus, it's just way easier. Because now instead of sitting here cracking eggs into a pan, all you got to do is pour out your 2 jugs or, weigh it out, measure it, whatever, and you're totally good. It's that's something I'm still kind of concerned about. I've been like trying to look into, I guess I haven't really been looking, but if there's any food scientists in the chat, I would be very concerned what your take is on pasteurized versus non-pasteurized egg whites digestibility. Because I've got no problem drinking 50 grams of protein worth of egg whites. I used to do it a ton, but I got turned off from it because it's like the bioavailability of protein in an uncooked egg white is like 50%. So what am I supposed to do? Drink double the protein so I can only absorb half of it? It just kind of sucks. And if you're really deep into an off season and you're trying to just scarf eggs down, it's not the most enjoyable meal you can put together. So that's but if the consensus was that the pasteurized versions was fully digestible, then I'll end up switching to drinking some. But either way, that takes us now perfectly to the oatmeal aisle. I really should be doing cream of wheat, but I've just been kind of lazy. It's a little trickier to prep. Whereas things like, just kind of, I probably only like it because this is all I'm used to having. but Quaker oats have really been doing the trick for me. I'm a bit more of a fruit flavored kind of fan, but I'm not finding the variety. Here we go. Yeah, something like this. Each packet individually, 25 grams of carbs ish. And here's one hack that I guess this, I don't know, I wasn't really bulking at the time, so the meals weren't as important. But my thing in high school was I'd always have 2 shaker cups with me to drink between breakfast and lunch, because that's like a 6-hour gap of no meals, and but after lunch, but before leaving school. And each shaker was 2 scoops of protein, so 50 grams, and then 2 dried packets of one of the oatmeal flavors, usually strawberry, because the strawberry chocolate actually makes sense. And if you leave it in your bag totally dry, just get it wet whenever it's necessary. You know, I guess you could bring up whether or not you really have to get the oats boiled to totally absorb them, but as far as I can tell, it worked out pretty well. You know, and that's a little more of a tip for somebody who needs more intake and they're kind of struggling with getting it in. Because I mean, if you're only limiting yourself to meals in the kitchen when you're at home, and you're not one to like pack a really big beefy lunch, you're setting yourself up for failure, you know, because if you're gone, I mean, this is kind of my rule of thumb, like especially when I would do like city work in the summer, when I was going to school, where I'd be like gone for, I always scheduled it so I'd have like just 2 super busy days of the week, Monday and Wednesday, where I had like class from 8 to 4, and like I'd be totally gone from the apartment at school, so I had to kind of pack meals with me. But you know, if you've got more than like a 3-hour time frame that you're going to be away from, you know, any readily available meal, be it like a cafeteria or whatever, then I think that's your cue. If you're actually serious about getting into at least making sure your intake is solid, you got to get that scheduled. Either meal prep. There's a few companies that like, I'm not going to name drop them, but I don't know. It's not so tricky to make a meal, but I do see the appeal. I've tried a few of them before. I don't mind it, but that's where I think shakes come into play pretty well. I've kind of been chilling on my whey intake, but I've been looking into, or I've been hearing a lot about beef protein. I think that would do me well. I think the dairy has, I mean, I can handle it. I'm still going to slam some Ben and Jerry's, but I think the dairy doesn't love me, or the other way around. But either way, now we can actually make it back to the ground beef. All right, I'm usually a fan of some of the deli turkey, easy sandwich, but the fact that it's kind of just turkey scraps made into this amalgam, it's turned me off, where I haven't really been getting the deli turkey as much. That's where if you've got a Costco membership, or I don't, but my parents still do, so sometimes I'll kind of, you know, mooch off of them, but I'll tell them to get like a full-on 6-pound, actually I think it's almost like 10 pounds sometimes, just fully cooked turkey breast, vacuum sealed. And then, I mean, it looks like a freaking loaf of bread in your fridge if you take it out of the vacuum seal and put it in like a Ziploc or something. But easiest thing in the world, and you start to get a feel for it too, because I mean, it's like a, oh, I don't know what it's called, but it's like this game show where the guy has to cut a pretzel perfectly in half, and then they weigh the 2 sides. Like, I think I would do very well if they recreated that, but with a big ass turkey breast, and they said, $1 million, cut exactly 8 ounces in one slice. Because the same with counting your calories, the more you do it, it just becomes a certain kind of second nature. You know what I'm saying? It's like a musician knows his string is out of tune, even if only slightly, because he's so used to hearing it. So if you're used to weighing all your foods, rice, protein, ground beef, everything, then you can kind of look at a meal, even without somebody telling you, and just by kind of feeling and taste and like, how greasy is this, or just whatever. And you can get, I mean, I would like to think I'd be pretty good at it, but I could confidently say that I'd be within probably a 30% error rate of guessing the macros of any given meal. And sure, that might sound kind of rough, like 30% over, 30% under, whatever. But compared to not tracking anything at all, you're way ahead of the freaking curve. But I think I finally freaking made it. So I lean a little leaner with the ground beef, probably closer to, I'd love to see 98%. That's usually a little more rare, but 96 works perfectly well too. So, ooh. The only thing that sucks is with the 96%, they don't make like a big, like 4-pound pack. They only come in 1-pound increments. But things like this, since it's just going to be plain anyway, like I'm not the kind of guy to like make muscle burgers or like little individual patties or anything. This is just going to be 5 pounds all at once into a stove pot, stirred, cooked on low until it's all, totally cooked through. And then I can strain that and I can have, I think 6 pounds is the most I've ever done at once. 6 is a little crazy, but by having it fully, just cooked and prepped, sitting in the fridge, it's ready. As much as I'm not walking around with like Tupperware meals, I do always try to make sure I have at least the basic components of what my meals are going to be for the day totally prepped, or at least one step away. The instant oatmeal, that's just pouring some boiling water out of a kettle, done. Ground beef, cooked, left in the fridge, all you got to do is scoop it out, right? Things like that. So the less friction that you can have from the thought, I need to get a meal in, to the action of eating a meal, the better. Because the longer something would take, the more it's going to be a chore, and then subconsciously you're not even want to do it. And before you know it, you said you were bulking. It's been 3 months. You weigh the exact same. I'm not going to say you made no progress, because lifting consistently, that's something. Right? I'm not saying that's nothing. But if you could have made more gains and you didn't, that kind of makes me think, like, if that time wasn't wasted, what was it? So that's where I would most certainly look back at, any off season. And if I made like negligible size difference from beginning to end, if I started the bulk at 230 and ended it 6 months later at 235, not substantially bigger, just with like some more body fat, it's like, what did I do? You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that they're not as flashy, right? A set of 3-plate bench is way cooler than coming to the grocery store, putting together a bunch of ground beef and, whatever, and prepping it and everything else like that. But this is the kind of behind the scenes. This is the guy who is sitting at his desk all day looking up different rubber polymers because of their frictional strength or whatever. And down the road, that results in like a freaking F1 car getting an extra 3 seconds on whatever kind of track, So it's like, it might seem like a small thing now, but it will scale to become larger. But I mean, yeah, shit. No Krispy Kreme even on this one. Yeah, a little bit of a quicker trip. I mean, this is, I guess I haven't really taken a look at it. I feel like my grocery carts used to be a little bit more full than this. One thing I will do is go back and get another half gallon of milk. But yeah, man, I mean, nothing crazy flashy, It's more so a concern of like just making sure you at least get close to a certain caloric value, obviously macros included, to whatever is necessary for your current goals. So I'm talking, and this could be a whole kind of like lecture style video in and of itself, but just to put it simply, like, go on Google, look up maintenance calorie calculator. It'll ask you to, the first website, doesn't matter. It'll ask you to plug in your height, weight, body fat, how much you work out, everything else about you. And it'll pump out a number, and the number will be like close-ish. If I write down, okay, I'm 5'11", I'm 23, I'm a guy, I weigh 260, I'm like 12% body fat, I work out every day, it's going to give me a number, like a macro sort of estimate of what I should be eating to maintain my weight, lose body fat, or gain weight, right? Now, I'm definitely going to kind of adjust it, because usually all these websites will estimate a lower protein intake than you'd probably want. So my rule of thumb, as like if you've never gone into macro tracking before, look up that value, right? Any website, it doesn't really matter. Find whatever macronutrients they kind of pump out. Let's say it reads, you're a 200-pound dude. you are 20% body fat, you're 20, you're a guy, you're 5'8", or you're 5'10", whatever, then I would probably at least adjust it so the protein value is your current lean weight. So I usually just say 250. I don't mind going over a little bit. But if the website said I should be eating 150 grams of protein, I'm going to change it, right? 250, so a gram per however many pounds I weigh, relatively lean. If a 400-pound dude has like 100 pounds of fat on him, he doesn't need 400 pounds of protein, you know. And then usually my rule after that would be cut the fats in half. So in an off season, I'm doing 250 grams of protein, 120 grams of fat is usually my max intake, and then eat as many carbs as it says, you know. But that's just an estimate. That's just, you know, that computer doesn't know you. It doesn't know how much you're fidgeting. It doesn't know how many steps you're getting per day. So that's an estimate to start off of, right? But that's phase one. And then if you really want to get a little more in tuned with your weight gain up or down, then you got to do phase two. Weigh yourself every morning after the bathroom, clothesless, right? I'm talking buck naked, so you can actually get a real value of your morning weight. And that's the most consistent time to weigh yourself. You know, if you weigh yourself midday, what if you drank 2 liters of water already? I mean, what are we talking about? It's like an extra 5 pounds, you know? So by weighing yourself every morning like that and tracking your calories, everything else, making sure you're on track, then that should show you, okay, am I getting leaner? Am I staying the same weight? Am I bulking up? So depending on which one you're trying to do, the scale, you know, after a few weeks will reveal if what you're doing is working, you know? So if I think I'm eating at a calorie deficit, you know, I'm telling myself, oh man, I'm grinding. I'm like starving myself. But after a month, my weight stayed exactly the same. Clearly I'm not doing enough. Either not enough cardio or not enough, you know, calorie restriction. So that's where you've got to look at it just objectively. Don't get your feelings hurt. No matter how hard it feels like you're dieting, if that scale isn't changing and you're, you know, maintaining the same body composition, that's your cue. You got to change something. Add more cardio, add less calories. You know, there's a few different ways to get around it. But as long as the scale's output is representative of what you're trying to do, then you're golden, you know. If you're, let's say you're like, I want to stay the same weight. I just want to keep getting stronger. You're staying the same weight. Maybe your gym numbers are going up every week. You're golden, you know. But the scale absolutely reveals all, and it kind of has to be, you know, respecting that sense. You know, that's kind of why there's such a hate for the bathroom scale, at least on like a non-lifter kind of level, because, you know, that means people have to look at the scale and say, oh crap, I'm 30 pounds heavier than I was 3 months ago or a year ago. And that's not a fun feeling. You know, I would, I'm not speaking from experience, but I would certainly imagine, you know, if you're going from like a lean dude and then 5 years passes, you're 60 pounds overweight, you're like, what the hell happened? You know, so that's a situation where, shit, that's just how it is. You got to take accountability for it. If you start using a grocery cart that looks a little more like this and, you know, doesn't have so many, you know, random ass treats like are in the aisle that I'm in now, that'll help. You know, just got to put it out there, put it a little more bluntly. The more you're sweating and the more you're tracking, I'd say you're upping your odds of goal achievement 2-3 times easy. But I'm gonna go get a half gallon of milk. Well, that's all I got, man. This is all I've really been grubbing on the last few months.